All right, so we're at 2 minutes past 2, so we'll kick off with some introductions and housekeeping. So thank you once again for attending. I can see that we've got some new people joining us as well, which is fantastic. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Tamsin. I'm the CEO of Medic to Medic, and we've got some great speakers today. So this event is kicking off our 10 years of being operational as our own independent charity. We have actually been in operation longer than that. So we've been in operation since 2007, but as our own independent organization, we're now at 10 years, which is a great achievement and something that we're all really proud of. So if you're not expecting to be in the Medic to Medic 10th anniversary event, now is your time to leave, but hopefully you've all signed up specifically to come to this event, so it's great to have you. A few housekeeping rules, or not rules, but just to be aware of. So this is our first ever online event, and we're hoping that it's going to go smoothly without any glitches. But of course, some unforeseen things do happen, so just bear with us. We will be recording, as you may have heard, we've already started recording, and that's just so that others who can't attend today can listen at a later time. So that also means, like, if you need to leave at any time, you can pick up on some of the talks later on, and the recording will go on our YouTube channel. So keep an eye out for that, and it's going to be posted on all of our social media pages for the link as well. So if you do need to leave, then please do, and you can come back and listen to it at a later time. So today we've got some great speakers. We've got 4 speakers in total, including myself, and it's meant to give you a potted overview on our history, the impact that we've had from sort of a student and graduate perspective through to faculty in Malawi, and then our future plans and vision. There will be questions at the end of each speaker's talk. You can either put them in the chat or in the Q&A, or I think we should be able to also enable the audio for that side as well. So any of those options are great. Obviously, depending on the number of questions we have, we may not get through all of them. If any we don't get to because of timing and needing to move on, we will try and direct them to the relevant speaker after the event, and we will try and get the answers to you over email. That being in mind as well, I'll put our contact details and our website information in the chat box as well, so that if you do want to follow up with any questions at the end, you know how to get in touch with us. So just as a brief overview before I hand over to our first speaker. So many of you will know what we do already, but Medic to Medic is a small international development charity with our main projects in Malawi, and we support students who are training to be health workers in Malawi with the cost of their training by providing them with scholarships. So our support includes tuition fees, once a semester allowance, medical equipment, as well as a laptop. Currently, we've got over 100 students in training, and that's spread across 12 different colleges in Malawi. And our most recent graduates graduated just this month, bringing the total to 175 alumni in the country, which is obviously a great achievement, and we're growing year on year, which is fantastic. So to start off, we've got Dr. Nick Mandeville, who's doing our first talk. Nick brings with him a wealth of knowledge about Medic to Medic, having been with us right from the start. So he has no medical background, and he's currently a semi-retired water resources engineer. He worked for over 4 years in Malawi from 1976 to 1980, filling a Malawi government post as a principal hydrologist based in Lilongwe. And part of his work involved inspecting river gauging stations, which took him all over Malawi, except the Nika Plateau. And in June 1980, his wife, Eileen, gave birth to their 3rd child, Kate, at Nakoma Mission Hospital, which at that time was supported by South African medical staff and is located about 50 kilometres southeast of Lilongwe. Later, Kate trained as a doctor, specialising in public health, and she went on to become the founder of Medic to Medic in 2007. As Kate had a full-time job, while Nick was a self-employed consultant with more flexible work schedule, Nick was brought in as a medic-to-medic volunteer right from the beginning, and among other things has conducted many monitoring missions during the early years of our operation. He was a trustee for us for 10 years from 2012 to 2021, and he's produced the annual accounts for us during each year of this decade. And even though he says that he's retired from medic to medic now, he's actually still in the background quite a lot, and we appreciate his wealth of knowledge. So he's going to be talking to us about the early years of medic to medic and how we came to be in operation. So I'll hand over to him now. All the other panelists will be on mute and have their videos disabled at this time. So over to you, Nick.
I've unmuted myself now and put my slideshow. Can everybody see the slides and hear me at this stage?
Yes, we can. Carry on, Nick.
Okay. I'm going to be talking about the early years, the first 6 years of Medic to Medic, when we were just a Medic to Medic program and not an independent charity at that stage. I'll talk about how Medic to Medic was conceived and who were the people involved for the first few years. Now, for those of you who are not from Malawi, I just give a brief description of the setup in Malawi as far as health is concerned. There's 27 districts in Malawi and 3 regions. So there's the northern region here, which is has its headquarters in Mzuzu, the central region, which has its headquarters in Lilongwe, which is also the capital of the country, of course, and finally the southern region, which has its headquarters at Blantyre. And at each of those 3 headquarters, there's a tertiary referral hospital, quite large hospitals. There's also some referral hospitals in Zomba, which is here, a mental health hospital for the whole country, and also a medical hospital. And each of these remaining 23 districts has a district hospital, which has been built since the time of independence. So it's well provided with district hospitals, and then each district has a system of health centers scattered over the district. These brown hatched areas are where we had one of our students actually in that district in, I think, 2016. Okay, now before these district hospitals were built, going back a long time, more than 100 years, there were a system of mission hospitals scattered around the country. There was Livingstonia, which is up here. There's Ekwendeni, which is just north of Mzuzu, Mbengweni down this sort of area, Medisi down this area, Likuni is on the west of Lilongwe, and then Nkoma is on the east of Lilongwe, about here, and then you've got Mua Mission down in the Rift Valley, and the Lanji Mission, which is over here, and there's many others, but that's just illustrating a few. And these were set up by a number of different Christian organizations, Presbyterian, Anglican, Catholic, Adventist, and so on. In Malawi, you've got a tremendous spread of different religious sects. Okay, I want to pick out one in particular. This is very important as far as the medic is concerned, and this is the Nkoma Mission Hospital. You can see on the map of the central region where it lies, about 50 kilometers southeast of Lilongwe city. And it's in a very rural area. It's not really a town even, it's just a little village where it's actually situated. And this is a picture of it. This on the left is a picture looking south, and you can see Dedza Mountain in the far distance. And that wing, I think, has been built recently. It certainly wasn't there when we were in Malawi. And you've got the triage area on the right, which possibly is part of the original hospital. Now, Nkoma Mission was very important because, as Tamsin said, Kate Mandeville was born there just towards the end of my 4-year stint in Malawi. And on the left, you can see her, she's about 1 month old there, I think, not doing very much at that stage. And that picture was taken in our house gardens in Lilongwe. Some of you may recognize the standard architecture of the houses there. Now, when she was born, we promised that when she was 21, we would take her back and see where she was born and go around Nkoma Hospital. Well, that slipped a bit. She was actually 27 by the time we got round to it, but I took her over to Nkoma, and it was a much better road in those days. It was a dirt road back in 1980 from the main road. And I thought it would all go to plan, and Kate would say, "Oh, thanks, Mum and Dad. This is very interesting. Thank you for taking me back to Nkoma." Not a bit of it. As you can see, she just graduated that year. So she full of medical knowledge. And her reaction was as follows. Where was the emergency blood bank? And I didn't see any oxygen cylinders in the delivery ward. And how would you have got me to Mzuzu Central Hospital if there'd been some sort of emergency? In fact, you put my life at considerable danger. Oh, okay, daughter. Yes, okay, we've got the message. In any rate, because she had rather a medical eagle eye at that time, she also noticed that there were some Malawian nurses, but all the doctors were foreign missionary doctors. And the mission at that time was supported by South African missionaries. And so they all came from one of the churches in South Africa. So she wondered about this. And when next we went down to Blantyre, and she went to the College of Medicine and spoke to, well, it was Dr. Namanja in those days. And he was the Dean of Students. And he explained, he said, well, we're getting a lot of students coming in, many of them from poor rural areas, and they raise enough money by selling off some goats or some of the maize crop for the first year, and they raise a bit of money to get into the college. But it gets excessively difficult, and by the time they get to the 3rd year, they've really run out of capital funds, and they can't survive financially in the college, even if they're government supported. Students, the government pays a large proportion of their fees, for example. So they drop out, and this is a terrible situation because it's a disaster for the student. He doesn't graduate as a doctor, and it's a disaster for the Malawi government because they spent 3 or 4 years already training that potential doctor, and then they drop out and they're lost entirely to the system. And so that was the reason that Kate thought up of this idea of providing supplementary support to the students. So Dr. Namanja is now principal of the College of Medicine, and the original principal from the time it was, I think in 1991, I think it was founded. There's Robin Broadhead, who's now retired, of course, but he was also a very great help to us. So when she came back to England, she looked around and got in touch with this existing charity, which had been set up by Professor Colin Green at Northwick Park Hospital in northwest London. Well, it's in Middlesex at Harrow. So he was doing two jobs. He was also head of the research unit at the hospital, but he did this as a side job. And he was very helpful. He said, well, why don't you come and join us to start with before you go independent? And he had an assistant, Paul Purcell, who many of you know. He was their business manager in that day, and that was very helpful for us because he dealt with all things administrative, but also financial. So when we joined as a program, he was able to take care of all the administrative jobs and financial jobs, so Kate could concentrate on the actual medic-to-medic program. So he's been a great help to us. So Professor Green suggested that Kate pitches the idea to the board in September 2007, and on that day was when it was accepted, and we became part of INET charity. So that's a sort of starting date. There were very few of us in those days. There was Kate, who was really progressing all the program. As Tamsin said, I was soon drawn in as a volunteer, and my contribution was mainly going on the monitoring trips because Kate was on a full-time job in those days. And so it was us two and Paul Purcell doing all this work I mentioned, because neither Kate or I had any experience of charity work. We were very much in Paul Purcell's hands to do the right or the wrong things, as the case may be. So it was just us three to start with. But we did get some volunteer people in, either to work as volunteers or as office managers with a small salary, very small salary. And these are the ones I can recall. I hope I haven't left anybody out. But these are the early years. I have not mentioned any volunteer trustees because they didn't exist at that time. And since then, we've had a number of other volunteers. But these are the ones who help with the actual day-to-day operation of the program in the early days. I think you'll see Tamsin's name there. At that time, she was the, sorry, what's that? She was the student representative, medic student representative up at the University of East Anglia. And even then, she was very inventive in ways in which to raise funds for charity work. And the other one was Elle Wilson. She was the University College representative for a year or two, and also very active in making fundraising events. So thanks to all those people. Early the following year, we had a fundraising launch at this hotel in Bloomsbury, and also Kate invited not just many of her relatives, but also her immediate medical friends to this event, who become the first of the regular donors. And I think now we have probably about 100 who provide regular monthly sums to the charity. I think it's running at about £2,000 altogether per month from these 100 people now. It wasn't in early days, obviously. One trust I'd like to particularly mention that we applied to is the Sir Halley Stewart Trust. They produced two enormous grants to us in these 2 years. That 30,000 is about half our income for that particular year, so it was an absolute godsend to get us started. But there were a number of other trusts who also gave us some slightly more modest amounts, but that was the particular good one. This is a just a view of our first brochure. You'll see our medic-to-medic logo was already in operation then, and we got that from a design company, and it's unchanged since we started. I suppose one should highlight these two statistics that in the UK there are 230 doctors per 100,000 people, and in Malawi in those days in 2007 it was 2 doctors per 100,000 people, so not just 10 times lower, but 100 times lower than the UK. And most people in Malawi never see a doctor. They may see a clinical officer if they go to a district hospital, but many don't even go to a district hospital. So it emphasizes the absolute need of medic to medic. Now, this is what we did from fairly near the start, was to provide supplementary support. We don't provide full support to the student. They still have to raise some money to cover other items. So it's a supplementary support. So typically with the college fees, students have to pay 10% of the college fees. So we actually pay that 10%, and then government or some other organization pays the 90% of the fee. But what's interesting about this list, that really since the very early stage, this list, except for some minor tweaks, has not changed. So Kate's concept of supplementary support to the students has stood the test of time. I think next year, Tamsin may elaborate on this a bit later, but she's planning to introduce a student helpline, and that will really be a major addition to this list that we've used for the last 15 years. So the concept has stood really very well, has worked very well over the years. Now here's just an illustration, the medical books we give out. We had, I think, a grant of about £1,000 from the British Medical Association. And we bought up lots of Oxford handbooks, and in those days, we used to take them out in suitcases full of books. And there's two of our students, Ellison and Precious, receiving one very needed, I can't remember which one it is, but it's a very needed one of the handbooks. We started off with only 3 students in 2007, and we've got the names there. And then we were concentrating very much on MBBS students for the first few years. And you can see that gradually after a space of about 2 years, we started on introducing other specialties. Alice, who's speaking next after me, was first engaged, supported by Medical in 2010, and then pharmacy and clinical officers followed. Here's a picture of 2 of our initial students. After graduation, Y went into, became a postdoctoral research fellow, and he was working on clinical epidemiology trials for a number of years under a program under the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine and Tropical Medicine, based at Queen Elizabeth's Hospital. To Wongi, she did her postgraduate training in South Africa at a hospital in Cape Town for a number of years, and got a postgraduate degree from the University of Stellenbosch. And she's now an adult neurologist in the Ministry of Health. I think I'm right in saying she is the first Malawian neurologist to practice in Malawi. I think I've got that right. So she's done very well. And the 3rd student, I haven't got a picture of him, but Joseph Chizaka, he's now a lecturer in reproductive health at the College of Medicine. Prior to that, he was district medical officer, district health officer at one of the district hospitals in Machinga for a number of years. 3 other people we need to thank in the early days. One of them was Helen Zamalala, who at that time was secretary to the Dean of Students. Now, every visit we made, monitoring the students, we always honed in on Helen, because she was the secretary to Dr. Namanja. But the other reason was that she had very close contacts with the head of each of the 6 hospitals that the College of Medicine students stayed at. So these people reported very clearly to her which were the students who were really struggling financially, and she could collect these names and give them to us to consider for medic support. And also, of course, on the other hand, one or two students in the early days pretended that they were in dire states, and she could find out very quickly whether that was actually the case. In one or two cases, it wasn't. They were reasonably comfortably supported already, and we should say we don't particularly want to give you a medic scholarship as a result. So she was invaluable to us, and that's a picture of her actually in our new office opened last year, the medic in Blantyre district called Mandeville. And so she's our office manager there at present. Now, the other two people, Peter and Jan Todd, were actually friends of my wife. They taught in Kathmandu in Nepal at the Lincoln International School together after we left Malawi. And at the time when Medic started, they became, as it says, working at the Bishop Mackenzie School in Longwy. So Kate and I, on several occasions, on the early monitoring trips, we stayed with Peter and Jan at no expense. They also had a Jeep vehicle, which was their only vehicle, and they very kindly loaned that to us for making our initial monitoring trips around. In those days, it was just around Lilongwe and Blantyre. We hadn't started working as usual. So they also were very grateful to them. Now a little bit about, I want to talk about visits to London by some of our students. Now the British Council had a scheme in the early days of taking the best students, I think in year 3, I think it was, and they would be awarded a travel grant to make a visit to the University of Warwick in Coventry, in England. And they spent, I think it was about 3 months there. So we arranged for them to come down to see us in London on one of the weekends. So this is a picture of Stalin and Boston, next door to a bust of the most famous African politician, Nelson Mandela. This bust was actually erected in 1985, so he was still in prison at the time. And then, of course, he was released in 1990 and became president in South Africa in 1994. So all of our students like going to visit his bust. The next photo is Samantha on a nice day in St James's Park in London, and that's Buckingham Palace, where Queen Elizabeth used to live in those days, in the background. And it was a warm day, which it wasn't the case when Alice came to see us. She was going on a long, I think a year-long course in Glasgow at the time, and she flew down to see us in London. You can see she's looking extremely cold in the first picture. It certainly was very cold walking around, but the horse, of course, with the trooper stood there for 2 hours stationary, so he must have got extremely cold. The next picture is in Trafalgar Square, and you can see Kate and Alice there, and also Sheena, many of you recognize. She used to be our office manager for a few years, and then stayed on as a volunteer. And many of you students in Malawi would recognize her as she and Tamsin conduct the monitoring trips each year for 2 weeks. So she's been a regular visitor to Malawi, and she also deals with our gift aid claims still. So it was nice for Alice because she could meet some of her sponsors. In the left picture, you can see Dr. Sue Fairhead on the right, who was actually her sponsor, and on her right side, you can see Gifford, who was Sue's husband. So it was nice for both sides, Alice to meet her sponsors, and for the sponsors to meet Alice, because they hadn't done so before. And one of her other sponsors was my mother. I mentioned that Kate had drawn in all her relatives, and my mother was one of those. She was in a care home at that stage, but still at 98 years was fairly lucid. And it was very nice to meet Alice because of the following reason, that Alice was one of the, I think it's 4 physiotherapists who were the first to graduate from College of Medicine in 2014. And my mother started training, I think in the 1930s, to be a physiotherapist. And she studied at St. Thomas's Hospital in London. But the amusing thing is that the word physiotherapy didn't exist then. My mother actually joined a course for the Chartered Society of Massage and Medical Gymnastics. So that's a bit of a mouthful. And thank goodness they invented the word physiotherapist. But what was interesting is that my mother said when they first went onto the wards as physiotherapists, the existing doctors didn't know what to do with these physiotherapists. They hadn't themselves been trained on what physiotherapists could do. And I think I remember Alice saying to me, the same thing happened in Malawi, but when those first graduates went into the hospitals, the doctors sort of scratched their head and said, well, what do we do with these people? But hopefully that problem has been solved by now. Last visit was, well, the last one I want to talk about was Lice and Griselli. It was actually the earliest visit, I think, in 2011. Many of the male students at College of Medicine were very keen on English Premier League football teams. Lyson was a great Arsenal fan, so he did his 3 months in Warwick University. And then he came to London, and I think it was Nan and Kate who showed him around the usual thing, Houses of Parliament, Westminster Abbey, Buckingham Palace, etc. And then right at the end, they said, well, look, we'll take you one other place, but we'll have to get on the train. So they went on the underground train in London. And they stopped at this station, and on the wall of the station was a big sign which said Arsenal. Well, Lyson didn't click at that stage. He didn't notice it. So they walked out and came up to the surface and then walked a few hundred meters. And suddenly he saw this picture on the left with his favorite team and their huge stadium, ethnic stadium, which was built in 2006. And he said to me later, you know, I've gone to Warwick and done medicine for 3 months and I've seen London, but this visit was the most exciting for him. And you can see he's very pleased on the right-hand side. So just to finish up with, this was the situation in March 2012. You can see that we had the most numbers in the MBBS course, quite very much so. And then we just started the other specialties and just had a few students for them. We also supported the interns. So the doctors did a 18-month-long intern, and we gave them a little bit of support, not as much as during when they were students, because they got a salary, but the salary was not very high and they had other needs. So we gave them a modest sort of support. I think it was two lots of money during that 18-month time. So the total number was 39, which was a big increase from 3 in 5 years previously. But obviously it's gone on, as Tamsin said, we're now over 100 students that we're supporting. So later that year, in 2012, we decided it was time to start as an independent charity. And Paul Purcell was still there at the time in IMET. And that was invaluable. I think we moved to the Russell Group in 2013. But so during the time that we were setting up as a private charity, he was invaluable because he had already done it with IMET 2000, so he knew all the ropes. The one thing that was different was that we tried to change our name to Health Workers for All Limited. And after about 3 years, we decided, well, that wasn't as catchy as Medic to Medic, although it was probably more embracing. So in fact, in 2015, we changed back to Medic to Medic Limited. And, so we were a private company, and then we registered that as a charity with the charity commissions in the UK. Okay, so I hope you've got a flavour of what happened in the early years. I'll stop there and give over to Alice and others. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Nick. That's been really interesting. I think I'm always amazed that I still learn something when I hear you talk. I think I must know everything about medic to medic by now, but I'm still learning lessons. It was really nice to hear that journey. We've got a couple of minutes for questions if we just do the question slot after each speaker. So if anybody does have any questions for Nick, you're welcome to raise your hand. And then we can enable the audio for you to ask the question, or alternatively, if you just want to put it in the either the question and answer box at the bottom, or either in the chat as well. But just while you're maybe putting in some questions for Nick, I've got one for you. Do you you've obviously experienced so much with medic to medic right from the beginning. What has your best experience been?
Oh gosh, that's a difficult question, because there have been. I like all the messages that come back every now and again after the flu. Some of them saying how it seems how thankful they are to medic to medic. But we did have one. I won't give her name, but we had one visit to Helen in the Dignity student's office, and we were introduced to one student who. She'd done her pre-med year, and she was coming back to year one, and she'd saved up some money before she did her pre-med to get through that, but she'd run low on money for the year one, and she'd come back, she had enough money to get down to Blantyre, and she couldn't register because she didn't have sufficient funds. And Helen introduced us to her, and we were just actually finishing our monitoring trip. Luckily for her, we had another day or two, so we interviewed her, took her on with medic to medic, and gave her enough money at least to get through that first year one and support her from then on. And because she hadn't got enough money actually without us, hadn't got the money even to get home to where she came from. And now that student is she's a medical doctor, she's got a job, and she's got 3 children, so I think it's very warm. I think that's a difficult situation when we face it.
Yeah, absolutely. But for me, I think I agree. It's just wonderful to see the transformation from a student who's been struggling with many challenges, and then they're taken on, and you see that their confidence grow and they become engaged, and then they graduate and they're working, and it's wonderful to see. So we have got one hand up. So this is Felix Oreo. He is actually one of our students in Uganda. So Felix, you have a question. Over to you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm really inspired by how you've moved all the way from 2007, coming up with this idea and making it move forward. And I know so many things run, and there are a lot of challenges that are faced up and down. So what are some of the biggest challenges that you could have faced, and how did you come up with what ideas came up to tackle these challenges, and what keeps you moving every day, every single year, moving forward?
Okay. Thank you very much for your question. I think the biggest challenge was, I can't remember the year, but it was about 2015 and 16, when up to then, I mentioned that earlier that the student had to pay 10% of the tuition fees themselves, and then the 90% were paid by the Malawi government. And I think the figure was something like they had to pay 55,000 kwacha each year. And suddenly, without a lot of warning, I think it's only about 2 months, the government of Malawi decided to increase the overall fees at the College of Medicine. And So the whole fees went up, but their proportion they had to pay had to go up as well, because they were paying 10% of the absolute total. And so suddenly, a student who was paying 55,000 kwacha was asked to pay 350,000, about 6 times as much. And we were, obviously for our students, we were covering that increase, but we couldn't suddenly increase our income by 6 times. We were struggling just to keep going as we were. So it was an absolute crisis for us, because we didn't want to let our students down. They couldn't afford to pay the new amounts. And so Tamsin came up with the idea of doing what's called a crowdfunding event. In other words, appealing to the public through the internet to give contributions. And I can't remember quite, Tamsin, to tell you how much we raised, but it was absolute godsend, because we did manage to squeeze through that year. That we could have gone, we could have gone under if we hadn't done that. I mean, we just couldn't have supported the existing students, let alone taking any other new ones on. So I think that's certainly the most major financial crisis that we've had, certainly. Can you think of anything else, Tamsin? Any other
I would say that's on the list of the top 5 challenges I think that we've been through. Yeah, the tuition fee increase was definitely a memorable time. Yeah, I'm sure that's a whole webinar in of itself, the challenges faced and how we've overcome them, but that's a really good overview. We better move on just in terms of timing. So thank you so much, Nick, for your contribution and your talk. As I say, I always learn something when I listen to you and your wealth of knowledge, and thanks for always being in the background and all your hard work for Medic to Medic. So we'll move on now to Alice. So Alice Namanja is a full-time PhD student at the University of Hull, and her study is focusing on primary and secondary preventative interventions for cardiovascular disease among both adults and children living with HIV in Malawi. She works with the Mzuzu University of Health Sciences as a lecturer in the Department of Rehabilitation Sciences. Alice was among the first cohort of physiotherapists to ever be trained in Malawi, and she did her Bachelor of Physiotherapy under the sponsorship of Medic to Medic from 2010 to 2014. Following this time, she got a scholarship in 2018 from the Commonwealth Scholarship Commission to study a Master of Science in Cardiovascular Health Prevention and Rehabilitation at the University of Chester, where she graduated with this distinction. In 2021, Alice was also awarded a Commonwealth Scholarship to pursue her PhD studies at the University of Hull. So I'll hand over to Alice now, and Nick and myself will just turn off our video so you can all have her attention. All right, thanks so much, Alice.
Thank you. And thank you all. As you've heard, good afternoon all. I was trained as a physiotherapist under the Medic to Medic scholarship, and I always say I owe my my state now to Medic to Medic, because when I look back and look what I've been through, sometimes I fail to understand how possible have I has it happened for me to reach this far. But when I look back, when I got selected to start my Bachelor of Physiotherapy studies at Mzuzu University of Health Sciences, it was a joyous moment for me and also for my family. I think we all felt that was a breakthrough for all of us. It was an opportunity for us to part ways with the living conditions, poor living conditions that we were in. So it was a dream coming true for us. And my story is quite long and a sad one, but with a happy ending. And as I always say, I owe that happy ending to Medic to Medic. So I'll just summarize it, taking you through what I've been through and how Medic to Medic helped me and has continued to help me to be where I am today. So I grew up in an extended family. We are 5 children in my family, but because of the family settings, we were living, I think, a total of about 15 children in the house due to the deaths of my uncle and aunt. So 15 children living under one roof wasn't an easy thing to experience. And with just one parent working as a primary school teacher, earning about £20 as a salary, it was really challenging. And in the community I lived in, there was a misconception about a girl child attending education. I think most of girls, when they attend teen, like 15, 16, they're around, the route was for them to get married. And it was quite challenging for me to move out, to successfully move out of that environment and attend my studies, if it wasn't for the effort my mother made. And she continued encouraging me to work hard. And because she believed I was the only child amongst the other children that she had who could manage to help the others attend the education as well. I didn't understand what she meant then. Of course, now I do, but then it didn't make sense. But as a child growing up, I developed a sense of obligation. I felt I owned people like my family something, and if I don't attend it, it means I'll be guilty. And I had that throughout my childhood, and that's the only thing. Though mental, from the mental aspect, it looks torture to some extent for a child. For me, I consider it as a blessing as well, because that's the only thing that helped me to work hard, because I felt my failure was going to fail everyone in the family. And because of that, I worked hard. And when I got selected to go to the uni, everyone was happy. And I remember the day. I've never seen my parents as happy as they were then. And it was really a happy moment. My parents struggled to find money for me to travel to go to the uni, regardless of the excitement that was in the house. They struggled to raise money for me to go to the uni. I went there, I think, a week after the university had opened, but lucky enough, I was there. And it was life as usual, a happy child coming from the village, excited to be at uni. And though I had nothing, like literally I had nothing, no pocket money, nothing, just washing soap for bathing and washing. But I did not regard anything of that, of such as problems or as challenges. All I wanted was to do something and to be able to find a job that could help me to provide for my family. And that was the goal. That was the goal. So it was all happy moments until I saw my name on the list of students owing the university school fees. And there was a note under the list to say everyone on the list wasn't going to be allowed to sit for exams. And I began to panic because I remember then my mom was in the hospital, and I just had a chat with her like 3 days ago about something else in the family that needed money. And I knew she had nothing. And I also knew what was going on with my father. And there was nowhere else to get the help from. And that day, my dream just crashed. I didn't know I was going to make it, to be honest. And I remember going through to the Dean of Students office and seek if there was any other help for me. And that time, I think we had already applied for the student loan, and I wasn't successful. And there wasn't anywhere else to get the help from. And the Dean of Students just asked me probably to go back, and if the situation is that my parents are no longer able to raise the money, then probably I could defer to another year, which was something I didn't want to pass through or to experience, but that was the only way out. And the same day, I think it was around 10 p.m. in the evening, I received an email from the Dean of Students again, with an advert about medic to medic, and immediately I woke up and started working on the application, and I felt this is the only way out for me. Let me do this, let me apply for this, and let me seek help from medic to medic. And the following week, I think that's the first time I met Nick. And once I got offered the opportunity for the funding, I felt I got my hope, my confidence back, and I was determined to really utilize the opportunity and do something for myself and for my family as well. I think that was the main, at that age, that was the only thing that I was aiming for, to do well and to achieve it and be able to provide for the family. That was the goal. And I didn't expect that at one point in my undergraduate studies, I would have the opportunity to have a laptop, or to have pocket money, or to have the basic needs a girl child would need at my age. But it all just came into picture, and everything was just fine. And really, I had a good time, and it helped me. The opportunity that medic to medic gave me helped me to explore more and to study for becoming a professional, not to strive for me to make it in life as I had previously perceived, because then I had no worries, I had no issues troubling me in my mind. I was just focused on my studies, and I was able to concentrate on everything else that was to do with my studies. And it opened the whole wide picture about the education and the course that I was pursuing towards. And moving forward, when I finished my study, I think before even I finished my studies, I got the opportunity. I remember my head of department then, she's late now, may also rest in peace. She mentored me, and she really saw much potential in me, and she was there for me from the beginning. And when I was graduating, she asked me to find out if I had passion in becoming an academician, and she channeled her mentorship towards that for me, which was also an opportunity, a great opportunity for me at my age. And lucky enough, I passed well, and I attended what the requirements they needed for me to join as a trainee academician. And after my internship, I joined the same university, and they groomed me to become an academician in the same department. And moving forward, what I've attained so far, I've managed to educate my siblings, which is something that I felt I was obliged to. So I have managed to train a nurse within the family from Mzuzu College of Nursing, a clinical officer within the family, someone working with disaster risk management department at Capitol Hill, as well as an economist, and I continue to train my other cousins who were left behind from my aunt and my late aunt and uncle as well. And within the department at Tamsin University of Health Sciences, what we're doing now is we have created a mentorship program for children, because I know the struggle students pass through, because I've been there. I know the challenges that they face because I've been there, I've experienced it before. And when they come to me, because they are able to relate to me, and I'm able to relate to what they are passing through, it's easier for me to engage them in the talk. So the mentorship program is ongoing. And also looking forward to working closely with Medic to Medic, some initiatives which we have started to contribute and to give back to the organization and help all other students who are also in need to be able to realize, attain their goals, and also to help to join the healthcare force in the country. So apart from the help that I've experienced so far at an individual level, I also feel that the efforts Medic to Medic is making is really contributing to the increased access to the adequate and quality healthcare, holistic healthcare to the country at large. At least the time I was being trained at the university, the lecturers we had were, I think 90%, I should say 98% of them were all expatriates from outside, and some of them did not have a background about the contextual issues surrounding our healthcare system. And but at least now they're training me and training other people as well. It's a way that we are able to relate and tailor some of the issues in our education system, in our to do with the physiotherapy profession, to the contextual issues, problems, and challenges as well, which is a good thing. And we are training more physios, we are mentoring more physios, and we know, I believe that by the end of the day, we will work towards increasing the accessibility to the quality and holistic care that we desire to. Think so far there are many, not many per se, but there are about 120 physios, 120 physios trained in the country, and most of them as well have been helped by Medic to Medic organization. And I hope by the end of the day, we'll be able to reach out more people in the communities who are seeking for physiotherapy services. I know at the moment we are just in the cities and some districts, but not yet in the rural communities. But the potential is there, and I know by and by, through the efforts being made, we'll be able to attain that. Just last month, I saw in the newspaper that over 2,000 students had withdrawn from public universities in Malawi due to school fees and other basic needs as well. So this entails that the issues, the challenges that I experienced are there, and the economic hardships are just severe, and these are some of the things that are also contributing to the increased rates of suicide amongst this population. So I am really grateful for the efforts Medic to Medic is making to Malawi, and for Malawi in all aspects, at individual level, at national level, and the efforts or the interventions that you're offering to the country are just something else, and we are really grateful. I'm really grateful for that, and may God continue to bless you as you continue to help the students, and also to help Malawi improve the healthcare system through increased numbers of quality and well-trained healthcare workforce in the country. I think I should stop there. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Alice. It's always lovely to hear your journey. And I think you're a great example of, we're with you at the beginning, but when, just undergraduate is the beginning, and you can take it further forward, and you've definitely done that with your master's and now PhD, and you're a real role model for within physiotherapy, but also for many students everywhere. So it's great to hear your journey again. We'll open up for questions again if anybody would either like to raise their hand to ask a question through audio or to type it in the chat or the Q&A. I can see there's already a hand up, so Blessings has a question. So go ahead, Blessings, when you're ready. You may need to unmute yourself, Blessings. That would be the only way.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity that you have given me. As I said, I don't know if you're able to hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I have a question for you, Madam, which is quite interesting. First of all, to hear the story and how medic to medic jumping to raise to where you are now. But my question, my first and foremost question would be, as you were saying, the numbers of school dropouts in Malawi now is currently at a mark that the complexity cannot be run out or to accept that it's really in high numbers. What have you so far done apart from maybe contributing to medic, but as a Malawian person who have also been pulled out from poverty to a successful life that you are living, and also to jump in and also help other students who are in the uni department so that they can also help themselves to pull out and increase the territory of helping each other for ourselves as Malawians, not only depending for intruders to help us, but as a Malawian platform. What have you so far done? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Blessings, for that question. What have I done? Probably not much. Probably not much. What I've done so far is the time I've been, because I graduated in 2014. 2015, I did my internship, and towards the end, I joined the uni. 16, 17, and 18, I left Malawi for my master's, and then I came back, and I came back again in UK for my PhD. So I've been up and down in between these two places, but I've spent my time a bit with the medic to medic as well, trying to figure out how best we could contribute in trying to raise funds that would go back to medic to assist other needed students. And we had made, I worked on two projects to do a dinner and to do some charity works to raise funds that could go and help other needed students. So, but we experienced some challenges that we failed to achieve some, though some are ongoing, and they started the time I was leaving, unfortunately. So I couldn't work, give my effort on ground to do the work, but at least I was there in the preparation phase and I contributed. Aside that, to the majority of the population, I know I may sound selfish to say I haven't managed to reach out to other people, probably from the general population, but I think my efforts have managed. I do not want to probably begin to mention names, but I do have two other people who are not my relations that I support, and I think that's the extent I can stretch myself at the level that I am. So apart from my own relations, I do have two other people that I support, one at Luana and another one at MAST. So I think at an individual level and at the level that where I am, through these two platforms, I feel I've tried my level best to contribute, but there's still more time when I go back, because I'm not in the country. When I go back and look at what I can do to support other people, it will help. I've also, something that I can also mention is that I opened a small clinic, a physio clinic in the community, and through that community, I see there's a pediatric section where we see children with disabilities, and that care is given free of charge to the community. It's in Chitawira. And of course, the adults have to pay for the smooth running of the clinic as well. And I've employed other physios, two physios who are working in it, and I know they have other responsibilities as well. So bridging the gap between the employment and the employment rate at the moment, as more physios are not being employed currently, so they're able as well to support their families from what they earn from the clinic. So I think so far these are the this is what I have contributed to the community.
Awesome, thank you, Alice. That was a very comprehensive answer. We've got two other people with their hands up, so we've probably got about 5 more minutes for questions, and then we'll need to move on. If we go first to Jasper Singh, as you haven't answered a question yet, and then we'll go on to Felix again. So Jasper, when you're ready, please feel free to ask your question.
Okay, thank you very much. I assume you can hear me. I unmuted myself.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you. I make contributions to Medic for the last couple of years through a recommendation made to me by a friend. And my question just relates to wanting an understanding of how Medic to Medic, let's say, decides on fund priority. And in particular, I was wondering if a student, for example, does a first degree through that funding, would they automatically be provided with funding for masters and PhD as well, whilst there are perhaps other people waiting for just their first degree and so on? So I was just wondering how you kind of make those kinds of judgments, which are very difficult, I understand, but that's really all I wanted to raise.
Yeah, sure. I think, Alice, are you happy if I cover that question, as it's a bit more on the operational side? Yeah, so important to say, I think this is one of our major challenges, is selecting students, because in a country like Malawi, there are many students in need, and in order to select the most vulnerable, like how do you identify that? So we have very close relationships with the Dean of Students. We do have a rough criteria to sort of guide us to sort of select the most vulnerable. So often there'll be students from either orphan or single parent families, from rural areas, often the first in their family to go to university. There's a preference for female students, but we're pretty much 50-50 based on our current student community of males and females. We don't support masters or PhD students. We just don't have the capacity or the funding for that. We find that in terms of monetary tuition fees, masters and PhD, you can support sort of 5 undergraduate students with that amount of money for 1 master's student. So our priority is really the undergraduate level. Who knows what the future holds? I think we're always open to reassessing need and potential criteria based on the funding that we have, but certainly in the way that we are set up and structured at the moment, our priority is to get undergraduates through who have no other options. We often find that for kind of masters and PhD, Alice is a wonderful example of this. There are other opportunities with Commonwealth scholarships to lead on to that more really super specialized areas of study, whereas for sort of diploma level students, there aren't really many other options. So that's where we try to prioritize. And with that, once they're on a form of employment at a government level, they've then got more options in terms of salaries and income support that way, even though the monthly income, take-home income, is not very much by any means if you want to then go on and study a master's. But yeah, that is kind of our current outlook in terms of student support. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does. Thank you very much. And actually your answer makes complete sense. And in a way, at the back of my mind, I was hoping that would be the answer.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm glad I said the predictable thing, which is true. Yeah, that's wonderful. All right, so we've got one more question from Felix again. I'm really pleased to see that Felix is really enthusiastic in getting involved. So Felix, when you're ready, if you want to ask your question as well, and this will be our last one for this section.
Thank you very much. My question goes back to our second speaker. She mentioned something about mentorship for that group of people in Malawi. And I wanted to find out, how does this mentorship run? What are the things you talk about? And just basically, yeah, in that line. Thank you.
Okay, so this mentorship is departmental. So it's about the students within the Department of Rehabilitation Sciences. Of course, at the moment, we only have one program running in the department, which is physiotherapy. So our students are divided amongst the lecturers within the department based on their needs. I think at first it was like we just asked them, those students who needed extra support, extra mentorship support, or someone they could talk to regarding their issues, their problems, any other challenge that they're experiencing that might affect their performance by the end of the day. So we only we asked them to voluntarily express their need, and when they did, then we divided them amongst ourselves, like the faculty members within the department. So we discuss about issues at personal level. So any issue, as long as it's coming into interference with the students' performance or their focus on their studies. So if we identify issues that are crucial, that need support or intervention, then we engage the Dean of Students office to come in and assist if that's something that's beyond the departmental capacity to come in and help. But if it's something that the department could deal with from our student support section, then the head of department is able to come in and offer that support. But otherwise, if it's more to do with, say, tuition or material needs that will require more, that needs more money to be sorted or something like that, then we engage the students' general office to come in and assist. At least we are able to identify the need and refer such needs to the Dean of Students, who is capable now of trying to locate where to get the help and assist those students, which wasn't there from the beginning. So at least now we are able to engage the students to find out what's going on with them and be able to intervene. And we're able to notice if the students are not doing well, we're able to know what could be going on, because we know already, we engage them already in the discussion, in the chat. There's that relationship and we are able to read it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we'll move on to our next speaker now. So we've got Thokozani Bvumbwe. Toko is a registered nurse with vast experience in community health governance, health systems strengthening and nursing. He has vast experience in leadership positions in various community organizations and institutions and within the public healthcare delivery system in Malawi. Thokozani is an associate professor in the Department of Nursing and Midwifery and holds a Doctor of Philosophy in Nursing, a Master of Science in Community Health Nursing from the University of KwaZulu-Natal and a Bachelor of Science in Nursing from the Mzuzu College of Nursing. Professor Bvumbwe has served as Dean of Faculty of Health Sciences at Mzuzu University between June 2014 to July 2022 and has served as chair of deans and also chaired the Open Distance and e-learning technical committee of the university. He has served as a member of the National Council of Higher Education Technical Working Group on the Harmonised Public University Selection, and he is currently the vice chairperson of the board of the Nurses and Midwives Council of Malawi. He is a registered nurse at St John of God Mental Health Services and worked there for 8 years. He's been the district manager for Management Services for Health, leading implementation of community health development programs for Balaka and Zomba district health officers, with his main tasks to support the strengthening of district systems. He served as the vice chairperson of the Education and Examination Committee of the Nurses and Midwifery Council of Malawi for 3 years, from 2013 to 2016, and he has published 15 articles in peer-reviewed journals on strengthening nursing education in Malawi. So he's got a fantastic CV, I would say, in summary to all of that. So I'll hand you over to Toko now to give a talk from the faculty perspective of student support in Malawi. Over to you, Toko.
Thank you very much, Tamsin. I'm excited to be part of the 10th anniversary celebration for Medic to Medic. Having worked with students for some time, listening from Alice and Nick, my presentation is made simple. I'll talk about assisted but not supported, optimizing students' experience. You know, when students go into college, indeed, just as Alice has highlighted, they need support. They require support for them to achieve their educational goals. And we get inspiration from when we hear stories as what Alice has just said today. A fundamental question for my presentation this afternoon how do you feel to support a student who in the end fails? Having picked up a student who is struggling financially to attain his or her education. Now in the process, the student fails on the way. How would it feel? I guess that's the fundamental question that my presentation will deal with. Now, just to give some background to my presentation, I'll talk about the need for health workers. Then I'll also highlight the selection trends into public higher education. Then support from Medic to Medic has been highlighted, but I'll just pass a slide on that. Then I'll talk about students' challenges and our effort as faculty. Most of the times, it's not an important thing, or it's not an enjoyable thing to be sharing pictures of this, negative pictures like this for our country, Malawi. You see that picture, that's a ward, a pediatric ward. And you can see how overcrowded that ward is, with 2 nurses there providing a service to such an overcrowded ward. There you can see a good number of mothers being attended by a nurse, taking vital signs. But this is the situation our country has filled 48% of the vacancy spaces. We are told that we are yet to fill at least 52% of health worker needs for the country. Nick mentioned in the early days of Medic to Medic, when he was presenting, that in Malawi, 2 doctors serve at least 100,000 patients. And he highlighted that most of the service users may finish up through the service and never been seen by a doctor. We have 0.019 physicians per every 100 population in the country. For the nurses, it's 0.283. This is the statistics I've gotten for as of 2022. Now, on top of the slide there, you can see the mortality rates, 29 deaths. I think this is per 1,000 live births, if not 100,000. Maternal mortality is at 349. Neonatal mortality rate 19, under 539, and you would see that these figures are still unacceptably high. I'm sure for any country experiencing such high mortality rates, they would want to make sure that the health system, their health systems are strong. And the human resource or human personnel are a key component of a health system. Health workforce is a very key component of the building blocks of a health system. Now, if we have these figures, these high mortality rates, unacceptable mortality rates, but with the shortage of health workers, it still becomes not acceptable. It's very difficult. Now, you see that despite arguing that there is shortage of health workers in the country, in the next slide, I would like to show you the trends of selection into public universities between 2015 to 2022. In the introduction, Tamsin highlighted that I was a member of the harmonized selection of students into public universities. This is where we're getting the data. I'll present that in brief. In 2014 to 2015, for example, we had a total applicants after students have finished MSc or Malawi School Certificate of Education. That's the highest class in the secondary education. 18,069 applied to go into the university. Because in Malawi, for public universities, we apply, and there's a selection committee that selects based on the declared spaces from the universities. Out of the 18,000, 17,000 candidates were eligible for selection, were qualifying to be selected, in other words. But we find that only 3,684 candidates were selected into the universities, the public universities in Malawi. In 2018, 2019, 24,386 applied to be selected into the university, of which 23,775 were eligible. They had the qualifications to be selected into the university. Unfortunately, there's no space. Only 5,925 were selected into the university. 2020, 2021, 12,000 applied, 11,000 eligible, but only 6,984 were selected into the public universities. So you can see that despite the cry that we have shortage of health workers, which I'm sure is also the same in other professions in the country, engineers and all those. But the country is only able to support very few into the public investors. Now, there is another disturbing trend. We've different types of secondary schools in Malawi. We have public schools, private schools, then we have community day secondary schools. That's the CDSS there, that's community day secondary school. And we have the conventional schools where students are selected and they are in a boarding school. But CDSS or community day secondary school, usually students commute from home to learn. Now the trend is that the CDSSs in Malawi enroll 80% of the total population of the students going to secondary schools, 80%. And the other schools, that's the private and the conventional schools, they enroll 20%. Now, when it comes to selection into public universities, the figures I was showing on the last slide, you would find that those figures that are being selected, only 18% are coming from the 80% of the CDSSs. And 82% are coming from the private and the conventional schools. Now, I'm saying this because I want you to understand the background, because the situation is that in the community day secondary schools, the quality of education is not all that good. And those that have money or those that are able to send their students or children to private schools have money, they constitute the 82, when it comes to selection, they constitute the 82%. Now, the 18% that has come from the CDSS or from the community day secondary schools, having come from those schools with poor, I can say poor background in terms of even the sciences and the support. These are some of the schools where you have 4 teachers against the 8 classes. These are some of the schools that have so many students without adequate books, but you still find some still qualify and go into the university, 18%. Now, when they go into the universities, that's where I want to take my presentation to. When they go into the universities, never mind about that page first. When students go into the universities, the 18%, I'm concerned with the 18% coming from very poor schools. Some, we're told, even may not have seen a bigger science items. They struggle with science courses. Now, I'm talking about they're in the college now. They struggle with science courses. And trend have shown that over the years, we are losing a lot of students also through failing in the science courses. And this is also common at my university where I'm working as an academic at Mzuzu University. You'd also find that these students find it difficult to adjust to new environment in the university. These are, they are coming from a secondary school where they are coming from home. Some of them had to go to the garden in the morning before they go to school. When they come home, some, we've heard stories of no food, they rush to school. Now they are coming to university where they are almost free, and there is high demand of a lot of so many things. Adjustment to new environment becomes a challenge. For fellow health workers, students in the health work programs, there is a lot of pressure of work in the clinical area, where there's also very poor clinical support. Because like for us at Mzuzu University, for example, the academic members of staff have to follow students in the clinical area to do clinical teaching. Now, with shortage of teachers at the various colleges, finally, we leave the students with the nurses or the clinicians in the wards or at the hospital, where they are in short numbers and they have to take care of our students. So that ends up in poor support. Now, when the students come to the university has stopped housing students. Now students learn on the off-campus approach. We note that a lot of them are living in very poor housing conditions. Very poor housing conditions. You know, in our time, when things were a bit better, when you go to the university, you would get inspired with the life at the university and have some aspiration to at least to raise your bar of life higher. But the way students are living these days, the housing conditions, I doubt if there is any inspiration that they get apart from getting the knowledge for the courses they are learning. But in terms of standard of life, standard of living, I think there's very little that they are inspired because of the conditions where they are living. Social pressure and demands from home and family. We've experienced students who, when they come to the college, to the university, they are still thinking about home. They are still receiving communication from home about the situation at home. There is no food. I remember there was one of our colleagues came across a student who managed to get some sort of support from some well-wishers. But when he gets that money, he was getting some and sent to the family because there was no food at home. There was pressure about fertilizer at home. And think of that student when he is in class, what will he learn? So I'm raising all these things because Medic to Medic supports students financially. But now, what is it that us as faculty are doing to support these students? I'm happy Alice talked about mentoring and some personal advisors for students. That is key. Because if we just look at the students and say they have the support from Medic to Medic and we leave it there, there's pressure of work, new adjustments to new environment, there's social pressure from home, and these students need support. That's why my presentation is entitled Assisted but Not Supported. We as faculty, we have a responsibility to create an environment that will support the students to achieve what they need, to achieve their goals or educational goals. Because if we just leave it just to go like that, then obviously the academic performance also is affected. So what we've done so far, we are planning to create or develop bridging courses where for the colleagues that are coming from CDSSs, where there's poor science support, we'll be able to support them to at least catch up with those colleagues that are coming from the conventional or the private schools, so that we should not go into a situation where students are failing because of science subjects. We are trying to improve tutorial systems so that the students are supported, peer counseling and support. Students should be able to talk to each other. The pressures they get, be academic or pressure from family, from home, if they are able to talk to each other, help each other, that can at least improve something. Now, in terms of academic, we indeed also share students among ourselves as person advisors, where we open up and say, if a student has any problem that affects their academic performance, they should then meet their person advisors for support, because we know maybe just supporting them financially is not adequate, but all other spheres of life needs to be supported. We also need, from what Tamsin was saying, we need to make sure we are identifying appropriate beneficiaries for support like Medic to Medic is providing. There are a lot more students who are left in the different support systems that come to help students because maybe we may not have appropriate beneficiary identification systems. But we are trying very hard to make sure that, working hand in hand with Medic so that when they come to identify beneficiaries, the rightful people have to be supported. So that maybe by the end of the day, a student's life at the college can be supported when they are assisted. If students are assisted and never supported by the faculty or by the universities, I think we may not reap maximum benefits of what our colleagues who are supporting the students are intending to do. Basically, that's what I wanted to address in my presentation. Fundamentally, how does it feel? A student whom we have been supporting from first year, second year, and they come in third year, they are withdrawn on academic grounds because they were not supported. So we are putting all our efforts to make sure that we provide appropriate support for all those students that are being assisted to realize their education aspirations. Thank you very much. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Toko. That was a really interesting talk. I had a question actually. So you were mentioning that students potentially are withdrawn on academic grounds at Mzuni. How many students does that affect sort of per year from the nursing faculty?
Sorry, I didn't have much data for nursing per se, but as of last week, I was just analyzing students who are withdrawing completely, and some are being withdrawn to repeat a year, for example, for the whole university. We are talking about 197 students who are being withdrawn on such grounds. That's ranging from first year to level 4. Level 3. It's very rare to lose students at level 4, but mainly the trend I've seen is between level 1 to level 3, about 190 something thereabout. But I haven't analyzed much about the nursing. In fact, when I was coming, I thought through the discussions, we also need to hear from Medic to Medic if they have lost any of the students they have supported in the process through the colleges. But I can provide that information as we go along with our various programs. Thank you, Tamsin.
Okay, yeah, for nursing at Mzuni, it's only been one student that has been withdrawn on academic grounds, and that was at the end of their first year. So we were aware quite quickly, I guess, that there was a concern. Okay, I'll just open it up to the rest of the floor. So once again, if there's a question, just raise your hand and you'll be allowed to have the audio on. If you don't want to ask via audio, there's a Q&A section down below, or you can type it in the chat. So if there are any other questions, feel free to ask them now. Otherwise, we'll move on to the final talk for this session. So it doesn't look like there's any questions at the moment, Toko. So thank you very much for being our third speaker. It was really interesting to have your perspective. I remember when we first met at Mzuni in 2015 and just being very impressed by the organization, and our communication had been very efficient. So we really enjoy working with you, and we're pleased to be continuing the journey with the students at Mzuni. So thank you so much. Okay, so your final speaker for this session is me. So it's a little bit hard to introduce myself to you all, to myself. But I'm Tamsin. I'm a medical doctor by professional background. And I've been involved in Medic to Medic since 2009 when I was at university. And when I graduated in 2012, I was invited onto the team. And in 2014, on the latter end of that year, I became the CEO and have been very much more involved in Medic to Medic since that time. And my topic for discussion during this session is really to pull together some of our current and future projects that we've got going on as part of the charity. We are ever expanding, which is really, really wonderful to see things grow organically. And we are busier than we ever have been before. So hopefully we'll pull in some ways that if anybody would be interested in being involved a bit further, that you can get involved. So just sort of a year in review, 2021 and 2022 for Medic to Medic has been a very busy year, and it's been a very big year for us. I was in Malawi from September last year all the way through to April, so spanned 8 months, where I was setting up the Blantyre-based office in Malawi and getting our administrator and our team that side up to date with some processes in how things were going to work well for us. During that time, we registered ourselves in Malawi as an international NGO. Excuse me, sorry, I should also mention I'm based in New Zealand and it's now 4:40 in the morning, which is a reason why my voice might be a bit croaky, so apologies for that in advance. But yes, continuing from there, so we registered in Malawi as an international NGO, which in of itself took a few steps to get to that stage. But it's really wonderful because we've now, my vision for the organization is that we become more sustainable and self-sustaining in country and the way that would look is having functional offices in Blantyre and then having additional offices in Lilongwe and Mzuzu in time. So if we have a hub in one of those, in each of the main regions of Malawi, we can then support students on the ground, not just from afar virtually, and provide additional supports. And one of the things that I really noticed during my time last year, and I think it was a really great opportunity being on the ground for that length of time, I definitely saw a different side to student life, being able to meet up with the students a bit more regularly, was just how stressed some of the final year students were. And I think it's been really interesting listening to the talks from Alice and Toko, because they've said some things which have highlighted some of those stresses quite strongly. So some of the things that there is a lot of pressure on them in terms of supporting family members back home, having to share and distribute allowances back to family members, as well as that, finding housing. In previous times, many students would be given accommodation on campus, but that's not always the case. And also, I think as looking back at the photos that Toko was showing, was just how many patients there are on the wards. And actually a lot of the students on clinical placements are used for service provision, and they're often involved in patient care in a way that students in our settings wouldn't necessarily be involved to the same degree. So they're involved in managing very sick and unwell patients in a setting that doesn't necessarily always have the supervision or the resources to treat those patients appropriately. So they get introduced to death and dying at a very early level when they're not yet graduated health workers and have the skills to manage those patients. And it's often very sobering, some of the student updates that we receive from students, to hear of patient experiences And I think knowing in my professional background how I would treat patients in a similar setting, they can be quite confronting at times to read. So I think all of those factors combined can mean that actually being a student in Malawi is incredibly challenging and incredibly stressful. And I think I find inspiring just that the students continue going despite all of the challenges and sometimes all the roadblocks that are in their way to get to their end goal. So sort of following on from that, all the interviews and interactions that I was having last year, and just being really struck more this year than any other year that I have been interviewing students, that many of the final year students were stressed. They looked very withdrawn, eyes glazed over, just looked generally quite overwhelmed at times. And I was really concerned for their mental well-being. And it was at this time, we're very fortunate now that we actually have some counsellors and mental health workers in our alumni community. And I was thinking, oh, we need to try and match some of the students that I've been most worried about to these graduates to try and give them some additional holistic support. But I then started to think on a wider level that actually, if our students are as withdrawn and stressed as I think they are, that's likely to be an underrepresentation of the problem as a whole for students in Malawi, given that our community don't have the same level of financial challenges as other students who are still searching for tuition fees, searching for living support. And it made me think of a wider initiative to have a helpline for students to call out of hours. So the idea being that all the universities have some degree of holistic support for students, whether that's sort of the mentorship or the counselling support services, but then very few support services available after hours. And given that trainee health workers are often on placements during the day, they don't have the opportunity to necessarily reach out to those supports when they are available. So the helpline being free, confidential, available after hours from 5 till 10 p.m. every evening, 7 days a week, staffed by mental health workers and psychosocial counsellors, was one way to try and provide these extra supports. So that's something that we're currently fundraising for. To back up kind of my concerns, we ran the survey called the PHQ-9 questionnaire, which is essentially a validated screening tool for anxiety and depression. And within our community of students, we found that there was 60% of them had mild to moderately severe depression based on that screening survey. All of them stated that they would find a helpline useful and that they would recommend it to a friend. So we do have the evidence to back it up, that there are some concerns amongst student wellbeing based on that. So that's something that we're hoping to launch in 2023. We are currently fundraising for that separately. So that is an exciting sort of hands-on initiative, which we're really looking forward to moving forward with. The other thing sort of going along with that, another initiative that we'd like to get off the ground is a formal mentorship program. So the idea being there that actually with mentorship, we're able to provide holistic supports to students before they get to the point of needing counselling. So the helpline is great because it's going to be available and students can be proactive about calling, and people can be signposted to that service. But actually we can potentially do something to support mental well-being before they get to the time of needing a helpline. So now that we've got such a large community of alumni in Malawi, we're up to 175 this month. We're hoping that we can then draw from our alumni mentors who will then be automatically given students within our community when they're taken on, and provide sort of a big brother and big sister relationship. And I think that will be a really helpful initiative in of itself, and it will help us keep in touch with our alumni so that we can track them over their careers as well. But we'll also provide appropriate support for for students who are often new to a big city. It's their first time being away from their family. And I think sometimes decisions from students are made which aren't necessarily within their best interest, but they don't see it at the time, that sometimes the decisions they make aren't always going to be the good ones for their future, sort of with hindsight. So I'm very excited about that initiative as well. On a kind of operational level, I think now that we have a presence sort of throughout the country in Malawi, from kind of the south all the way to the north, we're at 12 colleges at the moment, and our community is ever growing. I think we are ideally placed to advocate for students in Malawi. We get to see the overview. One problem or one challenge for a certain group of students isn't necessarily just for that group of students. We can actually see it throughout our student community. So I would really love the opportunity for us to do more research within our student community, and then do some comparisons between student experiences in Malawi and also student experiences in other countries. And my vision overall would be that actually we are able to get enough fundraising from initiatives within Malawi that we can cover the majority of student funds that we need to get. And that will mean that our international funds that we raise can then be used to branch out to other countries and other neighboring countries from Malawi, to start projects where there are also need for scholarship programs in sort of Zambia, Tanzania, and branch out that way, with our alumni being actively involved in sort of program development from that side. Another thing which I would love, and this is probably more of a 10-year plan, would be that each group of sort of disciplines in our alumni, so say the optometrists that we have, will have their own community project, and whether that's running sort of education in schools about their profession, to try and encourage secondary school students to go into science subjects, or whether it's actually the optometrists run some eye clinics in their villages as a way of sort of strengthening health systems, would be really fantastic. So sort of moving on from there, we obviously need, as we're expanding and as we're getting bigger, we always need more hands on deck. So particularly with fundraising, that's a never-ending task. I think fundraising is a bit like gardening. Your work is never done, and even if you're looking healthy and good, then it doesn't mean that the leaves aren't going to fall and you're going to need to do something about it. So we always need more help with fundraising. So if anybody would like to be involved in that side, that would be great. We're always writing grants. We've always got reports to write. We'd like to get more involved in the sort of social media space, and there's lots of scope for being creative with that, with either getting involved in our blog or doing podcasts. So if anybody does feel like getting involved with that side, then please let us know. In terms of kind of the next fundraising events, we have got carol singing dates at tube stations in London. So we're in Pimlico on the 3rd of December, at London Bridge on the 10th, and then at Archway on the 17th. So if there's any budding singers or any connections to choirs, then that would be wonderful, because we'd always love to bolster numbers for donations. But starting on Tuesday, we've got our annual Big Give campaign. So that's a charity fundraising campaign in the UK where you can double your donation. So that our donation page will go live on Tuesday. All the donors will get an email about that, and it will be on our social media page. So if you make a donation via that site, then your donation is doubled, and you'll actually be able to help us raise twice as much as we were planning. So as a call to action, we would love you to get involved in any of those things as well. I'm aware that we are running tight for time. I think I could talk about Medic to Medic all day, but if anybody does have any questions or anything that you'd like to ask either in the chat, then please feel free. I'll just put our contact details in the chat as well, so that everyone can see them. Although I'm not sure if you'll all be able to see the chat, but I'll put it in there. But our website is medic2medic.org.uk, and we've got a contact option on there as well. So that's everything for now. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, just thank you so much for coming. We hope this is the start of many similar virtual events in the future. All right, well, that's oh, Blessings. Yep, you've got your hand up. Feel free to ask when you're ready. Blessings, I think you might still be on mute. Do you want to unmute yourself?
All right, yeah. Now, I don't know if you're able to hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. My question will be the same as more likely connected to the one that I asked the second speaker. What are the plans that you are putting in place or looking at the future to see those who have benefited from medic to medic, like myself, to be more linked with medic to medic so that they can also help in assisting the growing demand for help as well? Of course, I appreciate we have the forms that we're signing for assisting, but then I'm just looking at the challenge to say with the economical challenges that are faced almost worldwide. What are the plans for the future so that the medic to medic should not die in suspense, maybe in the near future after there is a certain crisis? Or I don't know if you are able to get my point.
Yeah, no, I do. Yeah, so in terms of the graduates getting back involved, so just for context for maybe the other people listening, so we ask all the students to sign a student agreement when they're taken on under a scholarship, and that agreement basically says that that each year after you've graduated, that you will pay a donation back to Medic of about 6,000 kwacha per year, 500 kwacha per month. In pounds, that's about £6 a year, roughly. And that's set as a minimum donation. So that in of itself is just a very small donation. Alumni can obviously give more than that if they would like. But we also know that as soon as students finish and they're graduated, you have a lot of responsibilities, and Alice was sort of alluding to that with the support of siblings and other school fees. So we've deliberately tried to set that donation amount as a realistic figure so that everybody can give that donation. So alumni are already doing that, so they're already giving donations back. Alumni are also, we're getting them involved in regular fundraising in Malawi. So at our office in Blantyre, some of the physios do massages every Sunday on a weekly basis. We've got our secondhand medical textbook shop in the office as well, selling to students medical textbooks that are donated to us, and that's at an affordable price. And students get 50% off if they have their ID. Sorry, you might hear my cat who's decided to join us. Otherwise, we're also doing sort of health checks with the alumni, with businesses, and we're registered and got permission from the Malawi Medical Council to do that. So there's lots of different things that alumni can get involved with. At the moment, we're in talks with one of the businesses on Lake Malawi who have asked us to do a first aid course for them, doing CPR. So there are definitely different initiatives always growing all the time. and things like the health checks and the first aid course. We just need to make sure that we have the right permissions in place from the medical council and things like that. But I definitely would agree with you with the rising cost of living everywhere. It is always a bit of a concern, because you never know what knock-on effect that's going to have to charitable donations. Fortunately, at the moment, we haven't had any donors withdraw, but I think it is it's always something that we're mindful of, and is always something that we're constantly working towards. I think, unfortunately, with fundraising, there's no silver bullet, so we just have to be proactive and being open to opportunities, and making sure that even smaller amounts are really helpful. So hopefully that answers a bit of your question.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
All right, so we have another couple of questions in the chat. Yeah. So Ed has asked for the fundraising here in Malawi to be done through the Blantyre office. If the details can be shared, that will be great as well. Yep. So I'll type them in the box here. So we've got an office WhatsApp line. So you can get in touch with Helen, who's our office coordinator. And she can certainly share more information, but specifically in the office, we've got the secondhand medical textbook shop, and we've also got our massages. We've got 2 guest bedrooms as well, so if there's any visitors heading to Blantyre, then they can stay at the office space, and it's 10,000 kwacha per night for a single person, or 15,000 kwacha per night for a single person in the ensuite bedroom, and that price includes breakfast. So those are just some of the small things we're doing in the office, but there's always more things planned as well. Okay, and then one from Daryl. He's just said, I agree, very good data presented with the talk, interesting. So thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Or I think Felix has his hand up. I'm loving how interested and engaged you are, Felix, with this. What's your question this time?
My question was in line with the Medic to Medic alumni contributions. Let me say for the student, I'm in Uganda, I'm not in Malawi. How does that work for us here, for me here in Uganda?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So there's a couple of options with that. So at the moment, through our alumni in Uganda, so there's 4 alumni in Uganda, and I'm hoping that they will make direct contributions to the next students for their living allowances, whilst Medic to Medic would cover tuition fees. But we may well be expanding like more officially to Uganda and getting registered that side. The alumni were asking about that, and they were looking into registering us in Uganda as well. So if we do get registration that side, then we'll be able to get a bank account, and then that will be obviously a bit easier for alumni donations to go into. You've still got a lot of time before you have to consider alumni donations, so I'm sure that situation might change, so we'll just keep in touch about that.
Thank you very much.
All right, so I think that's all the questions, and we've managed to stick just to 5 minutes past the schedule. So if anybody does want to answer any more questions, then ask any questions, then please feel free to drop us an email and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. But otherwise, just a big thanks again for joining us and for giving up your Sunday afternoon. I hope it's been interesting for you, and hopefully this is the start of many potential online events for the future. So just watch this space and have a great rest of your evening. Thanks to all our panelists who came along as well.